Because there are some nights when it looks like nothing happens in a person's life, but in reality, everything is decided in that single night. For Cristiano, that night was exactly one of those moments. From the outside, it was just an ordinary child's room. A few posters on the wall, a football resting against it, a sports bag left in the corner. But inside that room, a future was splitting in two. One path was quiet, safe, the kind of silence that comes with giving up. The other had no guarantees, only uncertainty, only the risk of being rejected again and again. And most of the time, people don't choose the second path because they are brave. They choose it because they feel the first one slowly killing them from the inside. Cristiano didn't understand this that night, but the restlessness he felt came from exactly that place. The thought of quitting brought short-term relief, but it left behind a long-term emptiness. Because quitting football didn't mean quitting a game. It meant losing the only place where he could express himself. That's why, when he stepped onto the pitch the next day, he wasn't highly motivated. He wasn't full of hope. He just didn't want something inside him to go completely dark. Training was hard. His body was the same. His talent was the same. But his mind had changed. Now, with every run, there was a thought following him. Maybe this is my last chance. Maybe I'm really not enough. And yet, he kept running. Because sometimes, when you stop running, your thoughts catch up faster. Over time, he realized something. Rejection hadn't weakened him. It had quieted him. It made him more observant, more aware. He started noticing the moments when others gave up. Those who got tired, those who complained, those who built excuses, and a strange awareness began to grow inside him. No one was special. Everyone was struggling, but not everyone stopped at the same point. Some stopped to complain. Some stopped to quit. He stopped and then started again. That small difference slowly created a massive gap. As the years passed, he became physically stronger. But the real difference was mental. No criticism could completely stop him anymore, because he had already heard the heaviest sentence possible. We don't see any potential. As that sentence echoed in his mind, it gave him a strange kind of immunity. When people told him he wasn't good enough, he no longer collapsed, because the problem was never being bad. The problem was being invisible. And he refused to accept invisibility. During his youth, he was rejected again. He suffered injuries. His performances were questioned, but every time his mind went back to the same night, the same silence, the edge of the bed, the boots that felt heavy. Because when you remember your darkest moment, your current struggles become easier to carry. Over time, people started talking about his hunger, his discipline, his work ethic. But no one realized these traits weren't born from motivational speeches. They were defense mechanisms, habits built to make sure he would never return to that silent room. Success was never just about winning for him. Success meant survival, staying in football, staying in the game. Not quitting. Even when he heard his first great applause, that child was still somewhere in his mind. The child who still felt not good enough. The child who feared everything could be taken away one day. That fear didn't destroy him. It kept him alive. People saw his confidence. But that confidence was fragile. It had to be rebuilt every single day. Staying on the pitch after training wasn't only about getting better. It was insurance against falling. Because once you've been told you're not enough, no success ever feels permanent. Every victory is temporary. Every applause can fade. That's why being the best in the world was never the real goal. The real goal was never becoming the child who quit. Later in his career, people criticized his ego. They called his self-belief arrogance. But no one wanted to see the fragility behind it, because strong figures are not allowed to be weak. Yet the heart of his story is exactly there. Strength didn't appear overnight. It was built slowly, with doubt, with repetition, with trying again and again. That's why his greatest opponent was never the defenders in front of him. It was the voice inside his head. What if they're right? Every goal, every trophy, every record was just a temporary answer to that voice. But there was never a final victory, because some questions never fully disappear. They just move into the background. Cristiano learned this early. Success wasn't a result, it was a process. And that process was defined by not quitting. That's why today, when people look at his career, they only see the peaks. They don't see the invisible layers beneath them. Layers built from rejection, loneliness, silence, and the decision to continue. And now, pause for a moment. Really pause, because what you're about to hear is not Cristiano Ronaldo's story. This is a door opening to your own story. What makes Cristiano Ronaldo's story special was not his first goal, not his first trophy, not even his first $1 million. What made it special was the moment no one was watching. Because real life is not won under the lights. Real life decides who stays and who leaves in the moments no one applauds. That night, in that small room, Cristiano had nothing in his hands. No guarantees, no plan, no one saying everything will be okay. His talent had been questioned, his future was uncertain, and for the first time, quitting seemed reasonable. Most people's stories end exactly here. Because people usually wait for this, a sign, a hope, someone to come and say, you can do it. But sometimes, no one says it. And that's where the real question begins. When no one believes in you, can you still believe in yourself? Cristiano didn't believe that night. This matters, because this is not a motivation fairy tale. He wasn't confident. He didn't feel strong. He didn't feel like a hero. He did just one thing. He didn't quit. And most of the time, success doesn't start with belief. It starts with stubbornness. Years later, people talked about his discipline, his ambition, his work ethic. No one asked this. Why was this man so afraid? Because once someone says, "You're not enough," that sentence never fully disappears. It only gets pushed to the back. Maybe that's why Cristiano still doesn't stop. Maybe that's why at 40 years old, he's still running, still working, still trying to prove something. Because some people don't work to succeed. They work not to lose. If he had quit that night, do you know what wouldn't exist today? It wouldn't just be one less footballer. It wouldn't just be one less name. The world would be missing a story that shows what it means to continue when no one believes. And now, it's your turn. Is there a silent moment in your life that no one sees? A struggle no one applauds, no one believes in, that only you know? If there is, know this. This video was made for you because success doesn't begin where everyone believes. Success begins with a single decision made when no one believes. And maybe one day, your story will also be one of those that started when no one believed. So one last question. What is the thing you're about to quit, but still keep going? Write it in the comments. Because this channel is not for winners under the lights. It's for those who choose to continue when no one believes. That night, the room was silent. But this wasn't an ordinary silence. It was a heavy kind of waiting, the kind that announces something has ended. It felt as if the air itself had stopped moving, as if time had slowed down inside that room. A 12-year-old boy sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his football boots. But he wasn't just looking at shoes. He was looking at every dream he had built up to that moment. The boots were worn, not worn fast enough to be replaced, because for him, football wasn't a luxury. It was a shelter. The laces were loose. The soles were thin. They were a little too big for his feet. But that wasn't the real problem. For the first time, they felt heavy, because they no longer represented just running. They carried a feeling he didn't know how to hold. That day, no one shouted at him. No one humiliated him. No one told him he was bad. They said something far simpler and far more painful. You're not good enough. It wasn't said loudly, and that's why it went deeper. Because people build defenses against words that are shouted, but calm sentences settle into the mind. It wasn't said in a big stadium. There were no cameras, no crowds, no journalists, just a small training ground, and a few adults with the power to decide. For them, it was an evaluation, a routine elimination. They didn't think about the crack it would open in a child's life. Cristiano had given everything that day. He had run, he had fallen, he had gotten back up. His lungs burned, his heart felt like it would burst out of his chest. And when he touched the ball one last time with the tip of his boot, he truly believed he had done all he could. And still, it wasn't enough. They didn't say he was bad. That would have been easier. Because being bad can be fixed with work. They said something worse. We don't see any potential. That sentence doesn't just erase today. It erases tomorrow. On the way home, he didn't speak. As the drive went on, the silence grew heavier. His mother noticed, but she didn't push him. Because some silences don't want to be broken. For the first time, Cristiano questioned why he loved football so much. Because football wasn't entertainment for him. It was expression. It was identity. It was a language that replaced the words he couldn't say at school. And now that language had been taken away. That night he asked himself a simple but devastating question. What if they're right? This is where most dreams collapse. Because you can reject criticism from the outside. But you have to live with doubt once it moves inside you. For the first time, quitting didn't feel like escape. It felt like relief. No more proving, no more expectations, no more risk of failure, because there would be no more trying. Years later, people would describe him as unstoppable. But that night, he was just a child afraid of being ordinary. The next day, there was no miracle, no dramatic turning point, no heroic speech. Just a small, quiet choice. One more try. It wasn't a challenge to the world. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was an agreement he made with himself. He trained when no one was watching. He went to the pitch early in the morning. He ran while others slept. He failed again. He was rejected again. He came back again. And each time he remembered how close he had come to giving up. Rejection didn't increase his talent, but it gave him resilience. Years later, when people would chant his name, behind every cheer was this night. A night no one ever saw. The most important moment of his career was never broadcast. It wasn't celebrated with trophies. It happened in a small room, on a silent night. Success didn't begin with belief. It began with doubt, and it grew from a small decision made when no one believed. If he had given up that night, the world would have never known the name Cristiano Ronaldo. And maybe the real question is this: in your life, which night were you closest to giving up?